All right, now we're getting to the part where we're actually going to install Postgres now that we've set up a system and done some configuration on it. And there are a couple of things you have to be aware of. We're just going to look at getting Postgres and the Postgres contributed stuff installed. I have two windows here. They're both logged into the same system. This black one is from my host. The purplish one is on the console of the virtual machine, but they're both looking at the virtual machine. And I pay attention to the prompt. You see the prompt there is the same as over here. I've got it logged into that same system. So we're going to have to do a bunch of things with root. So we're going to end up with three different accounts. Your login account, which in my case is Philip. The root account, which has to have permissions to be able to install stuff. And then the Postgres account. And in this process, we're going to be using all of those accounts to get things configured. So let's start with running the correct thing to update the system. And since I did sudo, it's going to take a second and I have to put in my password. The next sudo is not going to require my password, but it is going to run as root. And this was just created and just updated, so I wasn't expecting to find anything. But we can do sudo apt install now with the most recent version. PostgreSQL and PostgreSQL contrib. And this time there's going to be things it's going to want to install, so you have to say yes to using up the space. And we've got some other things like the client and stuff that it depends on for Postgres. You can install Postgres if you have extensions from source code. It is open source. You can install it on different kinds of things. There is a Postgres install for a Docker container that is quite good and useful for certain things. I would never run a database in a Docker container in production. It will perform horribly badly. I mean, there are fundamental reasons why it doesn't work good with the Docker file system. Okay. We probably have a Postgres database actually installed and running at this time. If I do ps-ef, this is get all through all the process, and then grep to search that for post, okay, we have just set up and created a Postgres database. It's version 12. That's actually not the most recent version of Postgres, but it's close enough for us at this point in the class. And with Postgres 12, it's about a year old. That's the one that's being distributed with this year-old version of Ubuntu. Okay, there is actually a Postgres version 14 that has some wonderful new features out, but there are things that we don't need for the class, so this will work just fine. Now, in the process of installing this, if we go over here and we look at etc password, okay, you'll notice that there is now a new account in here. Okay, that is the owner of the Postgres files. This has got an account and a group, and it's the Postgres administrator group. And we actually have to log into that group to be able to set things up in the database so that we can make it work with this account. Because right now, we can't log in from our account to the database. And in most practical situations, it's not one person logging into a database. You have a team of people, you're all logging into this shared database resource. Or you have a bunch of them. You've got a production database, test databases. But again, it's not just one person that's going to log in or one application. So the way that we can get from our account over to this account is we can do that with an su command, a sudo command. Notice this is just Postgres, not PostgreSQL. Sudo -i-u Postgres, and we will become that account. So now if I do who am I? Okay, it says I'm the Postgres account, and we can see that the database is running with PSQL. That's the command line to log into it. And we have an up and running database. To get out of this, it's \q. I'll repeat that again. It's a \q to exit from the Postgres command. You'll notice that it gives you a different prompt than the bash command line. All right, So we actually have the database up and running at this point, but we want to do some more stuff besides just the database up and running. We would actually like to be able to take this database and access it from our account. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to go into the Postgres command line utility, and we're going to have to create a database to use for our account. This creates the actual storage, the named storage for our account and where we're going to have it, okay? And then we have to create a user that's going to use this database. That's a terrible password, but we'll do it. Okay, and we have to give some permissions. Grant all privileges on. That's the database to the user. And if I could spell it would work better. There, it works. That's much better when you spell it right. And at this point, I hope that we can actually log in from that user. We have one more piece that we have to do. If we do which, it will tell us where it installed PSQL. That'll probably be in the path of the user. But let's go to that other window that's still logged in as Philip, and let's work from there and see if we can log in to the database. Okay, now remember that this is a terminal window that's logged in from my host computer as the user Philip. So now if I do PSQL, it should connect me into the database, and it does. So I can do create table with a table name as an int, and it'll create a table. So we're actually probably at the point where we've gotten the database set up and we actually have a reasonable way of accessing it. If I do -d, it lists the table I've created. So this is a success. Now, what we turn in for the installs, I'd like to see something where you do just a text screen capture like that, where you've captured the fact that you can create a table from your account logged in your database. And, you know, this is not a creative assignment in this first install. So if you get help from other people, it's okay. Use Google, use your resources. The object of this is to get something set up that you can work in. And you don't need this right away. I mean, I want you to get the homework assignment done, but we're not going to use this database straight off from the get-go. You have the interactive lessons to work with for a while. And we're going to be using this when we actually start doing stuff where we're building some tables and working with an application and doing more complicated things. All right. The hard part was setting up the system and getting it to talk to things, and the easy part is actually getting the database installed.